Hey, what's up? It's GC Kinsey, here to talk about what happens when you're on the aromantic spectrum and you realize that all your past romantic experience happened before you transitioned and what kind of weird feelings that can bring up. To start things off, I want to briefly explain my romantic orientation. I'm demi, plus technically bi, but in a gay way. The demi part of that means that I can only develop romantic feelings for someone I have an emotional bond with first. Demiromantic falls under the gray part of the aromantic spectrum, and every demiromantic person is different, but in my case, I don't experience romantic attraction very often because of how my orientation works. And the technically bi but in a gay way piece means that on the rare occasion when I am romantically attracted to someone, that person will either be a man or a fellow masculine-leaning non-binary person. I categorize that as bi because I don't want to lump men and masculine enbys into a single group, but I also categorize it as gay because whether I'm crushing on a man or a masculine enby, the mask for mask factor still makes it gay. I've linked in the cards to other videos I've made that go into way more detail about both the demi and the bi/gay parts of my romantic orientation. So feel free to check those out if you want more context, but you don't have to watch those videos for this one to make sense. What's important to know for this video is that several years back, I realized that romantic attraction and romantic relationships stress me the f*** out. The emotional highs and lows of having a crush are exhausting. Romance can be a positive experience too, it can feel fun and exhilarating, but what it has never felt is comfortable. It's kind of like constantly teetering on the edge of a cliff. What helped me realize this was comparing how it felt when I had a crush or when a crush led to a romantic relationship versus how it felt during those long periods of time when I didn't have any romantic feelings at all. I like to call that Aerospace because I'm functionally aromantic during those times. And how it felt was a night and day difference. Whenever I had a crush on someone, when I was teetering on the edge of that cliff, my life became way too stressful. Every little interaction with my crush would have a major impact on my mood, good or bad. Memories of my crush or anticipation of spending time with them would consume my thoughts. Everything I did, from the most mundane activities to the most fun times with my friends, would remind me of my crush in some way. If I started spotting red flags about my crush, my life was hell while I tried to rid myself of the feelings. If I didn't spot any red flags, my life was hell while I tried to figure out whether my crush felt the same way and whether we would make compatible partners. With the two crushes where it actually did lead to a relationship, my life was great when we first started dating, but then it became hell again as the reality of being with that person set in. One of them wasn't as into me as I was into him, and I constantly felt both undervalued and worried about seeming too clingy. The other one was so into me and tried to dive in so deep so fast that I ended up feeling smothered and overwhelmed. In contrast to all of that, when I was in Aerospace, my life was relaxed and peaceful. Did it have that same level of excitement as it did when I had a crush? No, but I had other things to be excited about, like friendships or vacations or creative pursuits, in a way that felt not only much more stable, but also much more fulfilling and complete. Did I still get stressed about things? Sure, but general life stress never felt as volatile as that edge of a cliff stress of having a crush. In Aerospace, everything was in balance, and I liked it that way. Coming to this realization was eye-opening for me because it changed the way I thought about romance and crushes and relationships entirely. In the past, when I had a crush on someone, I used to think I had to pursue it, that I had to try to find out what dating that person would be like. Especially the older I got and the more time I spent in Aerospace between crushes. When one of those rare crushes came along, I would tell myself, who knows when this is going to happen again? I need to see where it goes. Even if I didn't want to be in a relationship at that time. Even if I suspected that my crush and I wouldn't be compatible. Even if I knew that trying to date them would be a terrible idea that would only end in heartache, I still felt obligated to go for it because it might be my only chance. But after my last crush, when I was stuck with those pesky romantic feelings from the summer of 2017 through the fall of 2018, that was when I really thought things through and came to the conclusion that romance and crushes and relationships were just more trouble than they were worth. So I told myself, if I ever have a crush again, I will not feel obligated to see where it goes. I will not ignore any red flags or major signs of incompatibility. I will simply wait until the curse goes away and then go back to being happy in Aerospace, the end. But the whole time I'd had that last crush, I had also started actively questioning and exploring my gender. And shortly after I'd made that promise to myself about how to deal with any crushes in the future, I came out to all my friends as non-binary trans. Then I started my medical transition a few years later in the summer of 2022. And around that time frame, something gave me pause about swearing off romance indefinitely, which was the realization that I haven't had a romantic relationship since I figured out what my gender actually was. All my past relationship experience happened when I was not yet living my truth. And when you think about that, but you're also Aro-Spec, that can lead to some really weird relationship FOMO. In light of my transition, it's all too easy to start doubting everything I learned about how I feel about romance. What if my past relationships only stressed me out so much because I was an egg trying to date straight men? What if my last crush, which didn't even turn into a relationship, only stressed me out so much because I was questioning my gender at the time it happened, and that guy was also, unfortunately, straight? What if a gay crush or a gay relationship wouldn't stress me out in the same way? It's hard to know the answers to these questions when I've never even had a true gay crush, because pre-transition, if I even started to develop any sort of nebulous feelings of alterous attraction for a friend, and then I found out he was gay, I would nip those feelings in the bud before they even had a chance to turn romantic, because I knew he could never be into me that way. Post-transition, I have had 2 instances of alterous attraction for queer, or at least queer-adjacent friends. One of them was a cis man who was still questioning his orientation, the other one was a fellow queer transmasc enby. Even just that alterous attraction was enough to make me stop and go, you know, a gay relationship might not be so bad. If this alterous attraction does turn into romantic attraction, you might not want to dismiss it out of hand after all. Fortunately, neither of those cases of alterous attraction did turn into romantic attraction, so it was a moot point. But the thought still crossed my mind. Something else that gave me pause in a similar way was going to a drag show at a local queer club for Pride 2019. I wore a beard with a little bit of makeup and a really sparkly glamdrogenous outfit, and for the first time in my life, I found myself on the receiving end of flirtatious attention from gay men. And to be clear, I am usually super oblivious when anyone is trying to hit on me, but this was not even remotely subtle. I'm talking gay guys walking past and looking me up and down while they ran a hand up my arm or along my waist, like clear and obvious flirting. This was very different from how gay men used to treat me before I transitioned, and very similar to how they would treat each other or the gay male friends I would bring to the club with me. And I had a lot of conflicting thoughts and feelings about that night. The strongest emotion I felt was gender euphoria. When I think about the most gender euphoric experiences of my life, having about a dozen gay guys hit on me at a club during Pride easily ranks within the top 3. Because after years of having gay men treat me as a hag and never as a romantic prospect, having them treat me as one of them in that way was just, wow. There was also an angle of pure flattery to it. Even though I'm asexual and on the aromantic spectrum and I'm not often attracted to other people, I still love it when people think I'm hot. It boosts my confidence. There were also some weird feelings, maybe even a little repulsion, at how bold that flirting was. Especially with all the touching. There was nothing inappropriate, no ass grabs or crotch grabs or anything like that, but it was still a lot. I'm a largely touch-averse person. I don't know if that stems from my asexuality or just my personality in general. So if that's how someone chooses to flirt with me, there's always going to be some part of me that rails against it, even if I'm flattered by it at the same time. I also couldn't help but notice a huge difference in how it felt to receive flirtatious attention from gay men versus how it had felt to receive flirtatious attention from straight men in the past. Flirtation from all men feels over the top to me regardless of orientation. If my oblivious ass can tell a man is flirting with me, then it's too much. But there's always been an almost threatening energy in the attention I've received from straight men, which I did not feel at all from any of these gay men, even though their flirting was just as extra. And alongside all these feelings was that same pesky feeling I'd gotten from the alterous attraction to my two friends. Maybe you're swearing off romance too soon if you've never even given gay romance a chance. It's really hard when you're both trans and Aero-Spec to know exactly how you feel about romance, to separate your aromantic feelings from your gender dysphoria, to reconcile your past romantic history with what you want for your future, to navigate your regrets about gay relationships you didn't get to have in your teens or 20s because you transitioned in your 30s, or to be certain about whether you would have even wanted those relationships when you're gray Aero. To know whether you want a gay relationship now, regardless of whether you would have wanted one back then. To know whether it's worth taking that risk again, with all the stress and volatility and teetering on the edge of the cliff that goes with it. These feelings are complicated and messy and just really, really hard. But that's okay. I don't think it's important to know all the answers or be 100% certain how you feel. For me, it's a moot point because I've been happily floating around in aerospace for the last 5 years now, and I don't anticipate another crush happening anytime soon, if at all. But even if it did, the odds of finding compatibility with a partner are stacked against me so hard that it might be a moot point anyway. Many people would consider my asexuality or my transness as deal breakers on their own, but combined? And I have my own deal breakers too, like I don't ever want to live with a partner or have kids. So in spite of all this weird relationship FOMO that's come up for me since I started transitioning, at the end of the day, I still think I had the right idea about how to handle any crushes that might come up in the future. I'll look very carefully for red flags. I'll make sure that we would be compatible partners before trying to pursue a relationship. And I won't feel obligated to give it a shot if I know it wouldn't be a good idea, no matter how strong my feelings are or how rarely they happen. If somehow the stars align and I have a crush where there are no red flags and we are compatible and we do feel the same way about each other, would I give it a shot in spite of all the stress that romance brings me? Yeah, probably. But I also take comfort in the fact that the odds of that happening are extremely slim. And what's far more likely is that I'll end up doing what I had hoped to do all along. Stay relaxed and peaceful and balanced and happy in aerospace. And that's where I want to wrap things up and turn the conversation over to you. If you're both A-Spec and trans, how do you know how much of your orientation is what it is versus influenced by gender dysphoria? If you had any romantic experiences like crushes or relationships before your egg cracked, how has transitioning affected the way that you view or approach romance now? Has transitioning made you rethink your orientation altogether? And regardless of your orientation or gender, what questions do you have about all this? Drop a comment below and let's get a discussion going. You can also reach out to me on other social media. I'm GC Kinsey across all platforms. And while you're here, feel free to check out some of my other videos. I've got more vlogs like this one about my experiences as a queer person, along with cosplay music videos, makeup tutorials, a bunch of cool resources for singers about voice changes on testosterone, and more right here on this channel. So make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss anything new. And with that, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for all of your support. I hope this gave you something to think about, and I will see you on the next one.